I represent a group called Unión del Barrio, and we're always encouraging our members that when they speak, to make sure that they let everybody know who we are, because we think that if people understand who the messenger is, the message becomes that much better to understand it. Unión del Barrio was founded in 1981. 26 years now, 25 years now. And it was founded by what we call veterans of the last period of struggle. To us, the last period of struggle means the Chicano power movement of the 60s and 70s. And all of us that founded Unión del Barrio had already 10 years at least of political experience and experience in struggle. So when we got together, we brought together what we considered a wealth of knowledge and experience. And we can honestly say that within the Mexican liberation struggle on this side of the border, we have been the most consistent organization, and also I think the longest lasting organization, because most organizations last 2 or 3 years and for whatever reason or many reasons cease to exist. Even organizations such as the Crusade for Justice, etc., which we learned tremendously from, their lifespan was shorter than ours. And our organization today, the year 2005, continues to exist, and it continues to grow, and it continues to be active. We do our work through what we call projects and bases, and we have projects such as the Chicano Mexicano Prison Project, which we have literature up in the back that you can check out, and we really wish that you look at it before you leave. We have projects such as Somos Raza, which is a project that deals with young people. We have projects such as the Comité de Mujeres Patricia Marín, which deals with the question of women's liberation and how that relates to the whole struggle that our organization is fighting for. We also have what we call human rights groups that are under the leadership of our organization. And that's how we do what we call our mass-based work, which means that's how we work among the people in the community. We're an organization that believes in the liberation of all Mexicanos. We believe in the eventual unification of our nation, what some people call Aztlán in Mexico. And we believe in creating a socialist society. And to us, socialism simply means a society where there's no rich or poor, and everybody shares in the wealth of the nation. That's our interpretation of socialism. But we're also a very real and materially grounded organization, which means that we understand that our objectives are going to take a long time, and we understand that there's going to be some errors committed, and there's going to be some roadblocks, and there's going to be problems. But nevertheless, we're guided by that ideology. We're a very serious organization. Our members are extremely disciplined. They're politically educated, and they're committed to struggle. Okay? So that's basically who we are. Like I said, it's an honor for us to be participating in this book fest. And it's as small and as tiny as it is. We can look at the vendors here, and we can look at the small crowd here today. Nevertheless, no matter how small it is, we think that this is very critical. Events such as this are very critical to the survival of our nation. Okay? We're not going to survive as Mexicans if we don't have things that are related to our existence and our experiences. And this book fest is one of the few things that ties us up to that reality. We also understand the importance of literature and books and media in struggle. Because like the theme of the conference says, knowledge is power, and power will bring you liberation. So we understand the role that books and literature play in building knowledge, and this is we think, a very critical event. Okay, we think it's courageous for us to organize events such as this. Most people, don't want to do what we're doing here today for many reasons. One is they believe they can't succeed. They're scared of trying to do something. They look for the easy road out, okay? We say, no, we have to try, even if it's difficult. So it's very courageous for us to try to organize something such as this. And it's very righteous. Righteous to us means it's very correct to do this. We have to do this. We have to start organizing and trying to bring things to our people that the system keeps away from them or somehow tries to neutralize it or act like it doesn't exist. So we think it's very important, and I think that the organizers of this event should be recognized for this, okay? Just like, we recognize, and when I say we, our organization, and maybe I would say some of you here today, just as we recognize the importance of events such as this, so does the system. And when I say the system, I'm talking about the capitalist system that oppresses the majority of our people. They also know the importance of literature. Okay? In fact, I think they know the importance of literature a lot more than we know about the importance of literature. So they're doing everything they can to keep the literature away from the people. Our people, too, though, have a history of struggle, And Compañero Quiñones, which is not here today, has written a lot about that. That just like the system knows the importance of literature and the importance of media and the importance of expression such as art, etc., we know that too. And our people have a long history of attempting to and actually doing media and books and newspapers. And we can start from the, our indigenous history. The murals were, a form of expression. And we can go up to, the early 1900s, to Ricardo Flores Magón and the newspaper Regeneración, which, if you read it, I always tell some of the comrades in our organization, if you read some of the things that Magón was saying, it puts us to shame. He was already, and the comrades in his organization, which was the PLM, the Partido de Liberación Mexicano, they were already talking about things that we're talking about today. And in fact, what we're saying and what I'm saying here today is nothing new. So our people have that rich history, okay? We also saw that in the 60s. In the 60s, there was not one Mexican community in the 60s without a newspaper or some kind of magazine. Yeah, they were, crudely produced. Yes, they were limited in the quality. But every neighborhood had one. Our neighborhood, which is San Diego and Logan Heights, we had 3 newspapers coming out at that particular time, the late 60s and the early 70s. We tell people you couldn't come out of your high school without somebody handing you a piece of literature. You couldn't go to the park and kick back without somebody giving you a piece of literature. You couldn't go to a party. You couldn't go to a party without somebody selling you a button, a huelga button, or a brown beret newspaper or something. So, there was a particular period where there was a whole tremendous amount of literature coming out. But the system knew that, and I don't want to go into the whole history, but we know the system decided at one time that they had to get rid of the movement. And they had to get rid of the African liberation movement that was coming down, the Native American movement, and I say Native American because that's what they called it. We just see it as another front of the Mexican liberation movement, okay? But we have to recognize that because we're Indians too. That, for the sake of, political clarity or something, I'll say Native American movement. But they had to get rid of the movement. And by 1975, 76, for all intents and purposes, our movement was destroyed, so was the literature. And again, they knew that getting rid of the movement and getting rid of literature was super important because the literature was, opening the minds of people. And a great young African liberation fighter, Stephen Biko from Azania, which some people call South Africa, one time said, he said that the best weapon the imperialists had was the mind of the oppressed people. That means controlling our mind was the best way of dealing with us, okay? Because once you control somebody's mind, you can make them do everything they want. And that's why we see the great majority, and you know, I'm a teacher and I tell my students, the great majority of our people are fighting against their own interest. They do things against their own interest. And it's not a secret why they do it. They do it because their minds are controlled by people who are against their interest. How else can you explain a Mexican and an African American or African, you know, fighting in Iraq? How else can you explain it if they don't have, if their mind's not controlled by the capitalists and imperialists? There's no other way to explain it. I always tell my students, how can you be from this barrio, you know, Mexican from a barrio that gets harassed by the police, gets beat up by the migra, that doesn't have a good education? Why would he be in some desert that he can't find in a map unless his mind was controlled by somebody else? Right. You know, and we tell people that's where sexism comes from. And we tell the sisters, you know, we have a women's group and organization, and we say that if you want to deal with sexism, you have to deal with capitalism and imperialism, because sexism is part of our mental oppression. Everything from homophobia, everything that we or some people considered negative comes from an outside force. Our minds are controlled by outsiders. And this book fest and this gathering here today attempts to, you know, break or destroy the stranglehold, this grip that the system has on the minds of the great majority of our people. Okay. You know, when the system decided to, when I say the system, I'm talking about the government, etc., and I think all of you know, and there are various police organizations such as the FBI and, you know, all the little secret red squads that the people had, that the police departments had, that comes out now quite often, that we read about. When they decided to move on the movement, they also slandered our movement. That was one of the best ways of destroying a movement. And when I say slanders, they started just spreading these lies about our organizations and the activists that were taking leadership positions. And groups that were extremely slandered was groups like the Brown Berets, the Black Panthers, etc. And you know, they wanted to make sure that our people didn't see these organizations as examples. And they used literature to destroy these organizations. And today, if you read books about people who were involved in the 60s and the 70s, and Chairman O'Malley can give you, you know, dozens of examples, you know, they wouldn't write this stuff when these people were alive. You know, they're writing it now, and they're saying things, you know, that they're very negative about, you know, Huey Newton and other people such as him. So they slandered our movement as a way of controlling our mind, and it's working. You know, I can honestly say that it's working. I don't think it's nice, I don't think it's good, but it's working, because I've seen how people, when I bring up the Brown Berets, when I bring up the Black Panthers, when I bring up organizations such as that, oh man, those guys were crazies, oh they did this, oh they did that, they oppressed the women, you know, they were male chauvinist pigs, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, where did you get that information from? Oh, this book came out, or I saw this person on TV saying it, etc. So they made sure that our movement was slandered, right? And today the movement, I mean, the system continues to keep us oppressed by controlling our minds. And you know, I don't know what word to use, but you know, the schools dumbify our students, and the reason I know that is I'm a teacher. Okay, they dumbify our students. That means that they make them dumb. The kids come in smart to school. By the time they graduate from high school, they're dumb. Okay, something's happening there, right? They de-work. They take away our class essence from our kids, you know, from our students. They take away any kind of revolutionary spirit that they might have. So by the time they graduate from high school and they're ready to go to college, the great majority of them, they might know math and they might know how to read, but their mind is completely detached from their realities and their interests. So we understand, again, the importance of education and books and literature. And as a teacher, one of the things that a lot of teachers are struggling around right now is the whole No Child Left Behind Act. I don't know if some of you are familiar with it, but it's a federal mandate that says students have to do this, students do that in order to get federal funding, okay? But if we study it, and some of us have studied it, it's just a way of continuing to dumbify our students. It takes away any kind of critical thinking. It kind of takes away artistic abilities the young people might have, and creates robots that won't challenge the system, robots that will actually oppose their own people. You know what I tell parents? You know, when the parents go, well, I want my kid to read and write. I said, you know what? Your kid might grow up to read and write, but he's also going to grow up to hate you. Because these kids grow up hating themselves. Because everything that they got was negative. Everything that they got had to do with opposing their culture and opposing their class, opposing their history, everything. So they come up and yeah, they can read and write, and yes, they go to UCLA, and yes, they go to Berkeley, and yes, they may go to Northridge where Comrade Acuña's at. But you know what? They hate themselves. And when they hate themselves, they also hate their mother. So I tell the parents, that's what you're going to have. You're going to have a kid that can read and write, but he's going to hate you. And they're already beginning to hate you. That's why they're embarrassed to bring you to school. That's why they don't want you around, etc. Right? So, you know, we try to sum that up to them, right? But, you know, our movement does have a problem, and I want to end it with this, okay? It does have a problem because we do need, you know, educated people. We do need an intellectual group. We do need people with you know, thinking skills and writing skills, etc. Because those are the people that eventually help us raise consciousness, help us develop the material that's going to liberate people. So we have to find out, you know, how we're going to deal with that. And that's a question, you know, that our organization has been struggling around. How do we create, you know, how do we win these intellectuals over to our side, okay? And this is something that we think by organizing events such as this, okay, this is how we begin to try to, you know, identify people who are progressive, identify people who are on our side, recognize them, because, you know, you can only criticize so much, you have to also recognize. So it's a way of recognizing, you know, compas like Rudy, who have, you know, from the get-go, from the very beginning, has always stood on the side of the workers, and the side of raza, etc. We have to recognize, and this is one of the objectives of this book fest. But part of recognizing, you know, how we can win people over to our side, we also have to know how the system gets the intellectuals against us, okay? Because there is a struggle. It's sort of like we're trying to save souls, right? You know, we're trying to get them to our side, and the system's trying to get them to their side. And we have to understand how the system works in order to put a little monkey wrench and stop that particular thing that they're doing regarding the intellectual people. And one of the things that they do is, the obvious one, is they provide money, okay? And how do they provide money? They provide money through jobs at the university, through grants, etc., okay? And we know that whoever controls the purse strings usually controls the individual. So we have to understand that a lot of those people are, you know, financially, economically tied into the institutions, so naturally they're going to go to the side of the institutions. We also see how they publish their works, and I don't want to put people down, okay? But, you know, the majority of the work that I see coming from Raza is very poor quality, okay? I don't see, you know, hard-hitting research. I don't see literature that motivates people. I don't see, you know, research that allows us to defend ourselves. You know, what I see is research being produced so that they can get, you know, promotions at the university. So the system produces things that are nonsense. I mean, really nonsense, okay? And so we see how that works. So all we get is material that we can't use. As a teacher, you know, it's hard for me to recommend a book to my students because there's nothing out there, okay? Why? Because what's being produced by the so-called intellectuals and academics is not something that we can use. The third thing that they do is they present them as role models for our people, okay? Now this is the way you're supposed to be, you know. See, this person is very, you know, very civilized, you know. This person, you know, that's the way you should struggle, you know. You shouldn't, you know, organize demonstrations, you know. You shouldn't, you know, get mad when the police harass your family. You know, you do it a different way. So they drag these people out, right? They drag these intellectuals out and make them our leaders, okay? And that's a problem that we have. So our job is to expose that, you know. I think the chairman says, you know, we call these people neo-colonialists, right? Because they work for the colonialists. The colonialist is the system. And I think the chairman once referred to them as, you know, white power and black faces and brown faces. And that's what they are, you know. They might as well be white, okay? And, I mean, Oxnard is probably a perfect example, you know, the police chief and top cops and the mayor, et cetera, et cetera. You know, they're all brown, but it hasn't helped our people any because they have not changed. They're just basically brown people controlled by white power, you know, and white power is basically capitalism, okay? So we have to expose that contradiction, and we have to expose them to our masses, and we have to expose them to those individuals themselves, okay? And so that's a struggle, because one of the things that we've had a problem with is that people don't like us because we do that. And we're not the only ones. There's a comrade here, Froilán, from the Mexicanos Unidos en Defensa del Pueblo, and they've been around for 10 years, and they also been, you know, in the trenches with us, you know, exposing these people, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, but, you know, they don't like us. And I can honestly say one of the reasons we have such a small turnout is because who's organizing it, okay? They don't want to come here because they don't want to listen to what we have to say. Because if they listen to what we have to say, they either have to challenge us and say, hey, you know what, Ernesto, you're wrong, or join us, okay? So they don't want to challenge us because most of them are cowards, and they don't want to join us because they oppose what we're doing, okay? And we have said it to their face, so, you know, we don't have no problem saying that to them. And it's nothing personal, you know, because cowardly is something that I think all of us have faced at one time or another, or had a tendency. But we have to be honest about it in order to combat it. If we're scared, you know, there's an old saying, you have to face your fear, you know. If you don't face your fear, you're always going to have this fear. So, you know, we don't see it as a put-down. They might get mad about it, but we don't. You know, we're telling them the truth. So we think that organizing book fairs such as this, book gatherings such as this, is a way of beginning this process, okay? Beginning this process of liberating our mind. We know it's just a small step forward, but it is a step forward. You know, our organization produces newspapers and books. We self-publish, okay? And, you know, we say, and hopefully then one of the panels later on will talk about it, we say there's no excuses for not producing literature today. There's no excuses. With all the technology we have, with scanners, with the, you know, internet, etc., to not produce something, it's bad, okay? You know, San Diego State University, you know, when I was going there, we had a newspaper. Now they don't even have a newsletter, you know, so what good was this technology, or is this technology, if they're not using it? And we know why they're not using it. They're not using it because we don't have people who are thinking like us. Their minds, like I said, are controlled by the enemy, so they work against their own interests. So I'd like to leave you with that. We want to say to please check out the material that we have up there. You know, we're open to criticism, but we say make sure that it's positive criticism, you know. You know, we can learn from everybody. We're not, you know, we don't have the answer. We're looking for the answer. We're working towards the answer. And if you have a way of helping us get closer to the answer, we have no problem, you know, listening to your suggestions. So I want to just end it with that. You know, thank you, y que viva la raza.
Que viva.
Okay, again, thank Ernesto for his presentation. I'd like to bring up Rudy Acuna to make his presentation.
Says that Ernie almost made my wife cry. She was saying that the daughter's going to hate her, and I could see her face. She almost had tears in her eyes. That's why I started laughing over there, because Lupe is so expressive all the time that I get a kick out of it.